and we usually we're starting off with everyone taking a turn reading Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, chapter 21, texts 13 through 21. That's a lot of territory. All right, so who starts it off? You?
Sure. The great sage Cardinal said, "O supreme worshipful Lord, my power of sight is now fulfilled, having attained the greatest perfection of the sight of you, who are the reservoir of all existence. Though many successive births of deep meditation, advanced yogis aspire to see your transformation."
Your lotus feet are the true vessels to take far across the ocean remain and measure. Only persons deprived of their intelligence by the spell of the moving energy will worship those feet with a view to attain the trivial and momentary pleasures of the senses, which even persons rotting in hell can attain. However, O my Lord, you are so kind that you bestow mercy even upon them.
Therefore, desiring to marry a girl of the life deposition who may prove to be a veritable cow of coming in my married life, satisfy my lustful desire, I too have sought the shelter of your lotus feet, which are the source of everything, for you are like the desire tree.
O my Lord, you are the master and leader of all the under your direction, cultivating souls as if found by rope, are constantly engaged and satisfied their desires. Following the obedience of illusion, I also bear oblations who are eternal.
However, persons who have given up stereotyped worldly affairs and the beastly followers of these affairs, and who have taken shelter of the umbrella of your lotus feet by drinking the intoxicating nectar of your qualities and activities in discussions with one another, can be freed from the primary necessities of the material body.
Your wheel, which has 3 naves, rotates around the axis of the imperishable Brahman. It has 13 spokes, 360 joints, 6 rims, and numberless leaves carved upon it. Though its revolution cuts short the lifespan of the entire creation, this wheel of tremendous velocity cannot touch the lifespan of the devotees of the Lord.
Dear Lord, you alone create the universes. O personality of Godhead, desiring to create these universes, you create them, maintain them, and again wind them up by your own energies, which are under the control of your second energy called Yoga Maya. Just as a spider creates a cobweb by its own energy and again finds it.
My dear Lord, although it is not your desire, you manifest this creation with gross and subtle elements just for essential satisfaction. Yet you cause us innocent be upon us, for you have appeared before us in your eternal form, adorned with the splendid flesh of 2 cities.
Deep breath. I continuously offer my respectful obeisances unto your lotus feet, of which it is worthy to take shelter, because you shower all benediction on the insignificant, to give all living entities detachment from fruitive activity by realizing you have expanded these material worlds by your own energy.
All right, so we're going to chant 15 responsibly and get into it. Okay. Tata sachaham parivodukama samana shilang grihamedadhenum Upeivan mulam ashesha mulam. Durashaya kama dukang gripasya. Tata chaham parivodukama. Samana shilam grihame. Upeivan mulam ashesha mulam. Durashaya kama buham gripasya. Tata sachaham parivodukama. Samana shilam grihame. Upeivan mulam ashesha mulam. Durashaya kama buham gripasya. Tata sachaham parivodukama. Samana shilam grihame. Upeivan mulam ashesha mulam. Durashaya kama buham gripasya.
Tata sachaham pravyokama.
Tata sachaham parivodukama.
Samana shilam brahmane nedadinu.
Samana shilam grihame.
Eyavinam gulam asheshamulam.
Upeivan mulam ashesha mulam.
Durashaya kamalu durangayapyasya.
Durashaya kama dukham gripasya. All right. Ta-ta. Similarly, saha, myself. Cha, also. Aham, I. Parivodukama, desiring to marry. Samana shilam, a girl of like disposition. Grihamedha, in married life. Dhenum, a cow of plenty. Upeivan, have approached. Mulam, the root, lotus feet. Ashesha, of everything. Mulam, the source. Durashaya, with lustful desire. Kama dukha, yielding all desires. Angripasya, of you who are the tree. Translation, therefore, desiring to marry a girl of like disposition, who may prove to be a veritable cow of plenty in my married life, to satisfy my lustful desire, I too have sought the shelter of your lotus feet, which are the source of everything, for you are like a desired tree. Prabhupada's purport. In spite of his condemning persons who approach the Lord for material advantages, Kardama Muni expressed his material inability and desire before the Lord by saying, although I know that nothing material should be asked from you, I nevertheless desire to marry a girl of like disposition. The phrase like disposition is very significant. Formerly, boys and girls of similar dispositions were married. The similar natures of the boy and girl were united in order to make them happy. Not more than 25 years ago, and perhaps it is still current, parents in India used to consult the horoscope of the boy and girl to see whether there would be factual union in their psychological conditions. These considerations are very important. Nowadays, marriage takes place without such consultation, and therefore, soon after the marriage, there is divorce and separation. Formerly, husband and wife used to live together peacefully throughout their whole lives, but nowadays it is a very difficult task. Kardama Muni wanted to have a wife of like disposition, because a wife is necessary to assist in spiritual and material advancement. It is said that a wife yields the fulfillment of all desires in religion, economic development, and sense gratification. If one has a nice wife, he is to be considered a most fortunate man. In astrology, a man is considered fortunate who has great wealth, very good sons, or a very good wife. Of these three, one who has a very good wife is considered the most fortunate. Before marrying, one should select a wife of like disposition and not be enamored by so-called beauty or other attractive features for sense gratification. In the Bhagavatam 12th canto, it is said that in the Kali Yuga, marriage will be based on the consideration of sex life. As soon as there is deficiency in sex life, the question of divorce will arise. Kardama Muni could have asked this benediction from Uma, for it is recommended in the scriptures that if anyone wants a good wife, he should worship Uma. But he preferred to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead because it is recommended in the Bhagavatam that everyone, whether he's full of desires, God bless you, has no desires or desires liberation, should worship the Supreme Lord. Of these three classes of men, one tries to be happy by fulfillment of material desires, another wants to be happy by becoming one with the Supreme, and another, the perfect man, is a devotee. He does not want anything in return from the personality of Godhead. He only wants to render transcendental loving service. In any case, everyone should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for he will fulfill everyone's desire. The advantage of worshiping the Supreme Person is that even if one has desires for material enjoyment, if he worships Krishna, he will gradually become a pure devotee and have no more material hankering. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Is anyone here in the practice of writing or has ever tried to write any significant thing like, yeah? So anyone who's tried to write anything knows that the first part of writing is just getting your basic idea out on the page or whatever you're trying to get it. But the time that the part of writing that really takes time is editing what you've written previously, because what comes out first is often just like, and then you've got to make it, digestible for other people, which takes a long time. And especially if you're a good writer, you take a very long time. So yesterday, Advaita Acharya Prabhu called and said, can you give class tomorrow? And I like to have, some months in advance so I can edit everything down from the to something cogent, digestible, and reasonable. But I didn't have time to do that. So today I'm going to hit you with all the and you can decide what's useful from it or what's not useful. And you can, chime in at will and say, that just doesn't sound right. You shouldn't have said that at all. So, shyness will not be encouraged. Participation is the essence of the game. First of all, Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, why we read Bhagavatam every day, why I read it every day, because it's like a really good doctor's diagnosis of everyone's problems. And whoa,
That one's dying.
wow,
New life.
class. That's cool. That's up to speed. All right, Hare Krishna. So the most interesting diagnosis that anybody can actually hear, though, is our own diagnosis, right? Like if something's wrong with you, it's like, what is wrong with me? And you go to a doctor and says, here's your diagnosis. This is what's wrong with you. And anybody who in the material world who thinks that nothing is wrong with them, guess what? There's something wrong with them. So the fact that we're in the material world in the first place means that we've got some serious issues. We may be working on them, but we got issues. Yeah, so, and also, what's the most important part of any map? Yeah, you are here. There's a red dot. It says, here's where you are. And this is what's happening in this verse. Kardama Muni understands where he is at. He understands also what the goal is, because the Lord is standing right in front of him. But he also knows, where he is at. And he basically is praying for something and then apologizing for praying for it. I know I shouldn't be asking for this, but this is where I'm at. And as I was reading this, I thought, wow, this is really what each of us is expected or desired to be able to do with Krishna, to be able to do with our guru or whoever's given us guidance. It's like, I know the goal is here, but I'm down here. If we think we're up here, then how is anybody going to help us? If you look at the map and imagine that you are here is at the end of the walking trail or whatever it is, the map will be no good to you, and you won't have a very good exercise day. You won't get anywhere. So that's what I thought was really cool about this. You can't get anywhere without knowing who you are. And maybe you're just at the beginning. Prabhupada said it takes 40 years to become Krishna conscious. So it's a long game, and it's really helpful to know exactly where we're at. And Kardama Muni understands where he is at. He's saying, I understand that wise people don't pray for these things, but guess what? I'm not so wise. I got these desires, and I need you to help me deal with them. So that's the super helpful thing for us to know where we're at. Then we can be helped. The doctor gives you a diagnosis. You have this condition. You need to take 3 of these 3 times a day. Don't eat this, and do some of this. If you're going to a physical therapist, he can only help you if you're honest and knowledgeable about where you're at. Right? So if it takes 40 years to become Krishna conscious, and we're going to spend another 40 years in this body anyway, why not become Krishna conscious in the meantime and have something to show for our 40 years, is my thought. And the whole point of the Bhagavatam is to really get us off, to really help us solve all of our problems. But there's another verse, this is from the first canto, 1.3.44, where Prabhupada talks about the qualification for someone for hearing Bhagavatam. Just like if you're sick, if you know you're sick, you acknowledge that you're sick, and you go to the doctor, you don't sit there and pretend to be well. That's not very helpful. In the same way, somebody who wants to become free from material life entirely, they should sit down in front of the Bhagavatam every day and think, okay, how is this going to help me today? Like Prabhupada said that we should hear Bhagavatam the way Maharaj Parikshit heard the Bhagavatam. He was going to die in 7 days. He was on his way out in a spectacularly soon kind of way. And so he was really eager to hear from just imagine you're in this condition. And then in that purport, this is 1.3.44, good to read, that you can't give that kind of attention if you're not pure in thought. And you can't be pure in thought if you're not pure in the basic necessities of life, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. You've got to have all those bases covered in the best possible way just to get to the point of being able to hear the Bhagavatam. And that's what we're talking about here. Kardama Muni is trying to satisfy some basic human requirements. I want to get married. And he's approaching the Lord for advice or help on how to do this in the best way. And how many people do this in the modern day? Prabhupada talks in the purport about how, the main qualification for people to get together is like, oh, he looks good. Oh, she looks good. Let's get together. And how long does that usually last? Not very. Usually not very long. It's funny how when thinking of an important thing like getting married, usually the people that make those decisions about who I'm going to marry are the last people you want making that decision, because they're in the prime reproductive phase of their life. All the hormones and chemicals are surging through their bloodstream. They're out of their minds. They're crazy people. You don't have a crazy people arranging a match for you. You have somebody who's got a little cool detachment, some some experience. You want that. Trust me, you want that. He puts a large amount of time in his purport to how things go wrong and why they go wrong. Why it's good to have, like he says here, someone of similar disposition. Why astrologers are consulted. Why bring in all these pros? She looks good, he looks good. Let's, just call it a game and do our best. No, that's not how it works. That's, you look at the divorce rate and you think, that's kind of discouraging, but you think, because you're young and crazy, you think, I'm going to beat the odds. Not me. That's not going to happen. It's like, going to the graveyard and think, that's not going to happen to me, boy. No, sir. That's what crazy people do. So really, before marriage, anybody should have their head examined in a very thorough way. Hey, what would you want to do this for in the first place? And then, are you in sound mind, actually? Can you be counted on to make good decisions? Maybe not. So, can you be reasoned with? Because marriage is such a serious and heavy thing. It's a lifetime vow. In the Western world, we're not used to making vows. And if we do make vows, we think, well, I made that vow when I was young and stupid, but I'm older and smarter now, so I don't have to keep that vow, do I? Do I really? But yes, you do, and there's a reason why. There's so many reasons for that. We have these rules, these suggestions, these guidelines, these wisdom bits. Just like when the highway department makes a road, there's the road, and then they put these helpful lines up the center and along the sides, and then they got the guardrails, especially if you're going over, treacherous category. So first you got the lines. Okay, if you're not going to pay attention to the lines, you got to obey the guardrails. And if you don't obey the guardrails, then maybe you get a Darwin Award or something. Better luck next life. But all these rules are there for us to facilitate our forward motion as devotees. All these things, these guidelines are there for us. Because the goal is making progress. You might not be so advanced today, but if you make progress, you'll be more advanced tomorrow, and you win. You win that day. The day that in Krishna consciousness, which results in another day of Krishna conscious activity, is a win. It's such a huge win. You might not be, it's useless to compare ourselves to other people. But if we look at where we are at and think, my God, what an idiot I was just like a week ago. How could I have had that stupid thought? That's such a big win. And, and we could take that to the bank. Yeah. And also, much of this purport is devoted to talking about marriage and how in the Kali Yuga, it's all on the basis of the body or the mind. Especially people get together when they're intoxicated, and that throws a whole nother wrench into the works. And you wake up sober the next day and you think, oh my God, what have I done? This happens long enough that people write songs about it. The girls all look prettier at closing time. It's an old country music song. But marriage is really the heaviest life vow that you can take. People don't realize it. And there's a whole science for how it's supposed to work, but it really requires a lot of planning, a lot of research, because in the pure Vedic culture, divorce is just not an option. It's not an option at all. If there's problems, you got to learn how to deal with those problems. You got to dig into your emotional toolbox and say, okay, well, how am I going to handle this? This is difficult. Not that you bail at the first threat to your sense gratification. And most of us are trained up, if we're trained up at all, to bail at the first threat to our sense gratification. It's like, oh, this is just not working out. See you later. But that's not how it works in married life, especially if it's spiritual married life. You want to make some spiritual progress. You have to treat those vows as like a foundation, like a very serious, deep, wide, strong foundation upon which you build your life and your relationship. Because our relationship with our spouse, if we go that route to have a spouse, and most people do, that relationship is like a testing ground for our relationship with God. Because here's somebody that you have to learn how to live with. And similarly, we have to learn how to become Krishna conscious, because guess what? Krishna's eternal servant means you always have to be with him. So that means the relationship is going to need some work, especially if you're starting from a point of conditional life. So that's the reason that marriage vows are taken. And nowadays, like, we think of some local friends who have had their civil wedding, and then they're having their American wedding, and then they're going to have their Indian wedding, and you have like multiple weddings, some of which take many days. And it's like very much reinforces the fact that you are stuck. You are going to be stuck. You're going to stay stuck. We're going to make sure of it. We're going to shell out lots and lots of money so that you will feel bad about bailing on this investment that we're making in you, right? That's why weddings are supposed to be a big deal. It's not that you go to Vegas and what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. No. Hare Krishna. So that's why so much planning is required, so much thought is required, counseling is required. It's better to have lots and lots of premarital counseling, because once you've got marital troubles, you need to deal with some heavier post-marital counseling. It's like, don't make a decision in a snap way based on your conditioned mind and senses that you're going to be paying for with interest for decades. It's better to get a lot of premarital counseling. I've been married for 31 years. I know how it goes. It can often be very difficult. But that's the point. The point is that it needs to be difficult sometimes, especially if you're a conditioned rascal. And I can attest to that. That's where I'm coming from. Because naturally what happens when our sense gratification is cut off, we become angry. We try to find happiness some other way. And that's just not going to fly in spiritual life. It's got to work itself out on some higher plane. You've got to have some compatibility with that person, and spiritually that you share the same essential values. Like my spiritual master told me, that you need to find someone who wants to live the way you do. And that takes self-knowledge. That's not just something that you can just imagine. That takes a lot of self-knowledge. Before marrying, it says in the purport here, one should select a wife of like disposition, or husband, it goes both ways, of like disposition, and not be enamored by so-called beauty or other attractive features for sense gratification. I mean, who does this? This is like so deep and so quaint, it seems. But we're just not thinking clearly when we're young. And as a result of that, what happens if there are children? Then the children are going to suffer from that if there's not serious planning. If you grow up as a child in a household where you get the sense, because people can't hide for too long from what they're really about, you get the sense that you weren't really wanted, that's going to weigh on you for your whole life. You're going to have to go through years of therapy to deal with the fact that mom and dad were drunk or whatever. I'm speaking from personal experience again. Hare Krishna. But and Prabhupada and Kardama Muni acknowledge this fact that this is a material thing. We think it's a material thing. For a devotee, nothing's a material thing. Everything's a spiritual thing. Therefore, akama sarva kama va moksha kama udaradi. No matter where you are at, no matter where you are here on the map, Tivrena Bhakti Yogena. This last sentence of the purport to me is the most encouraging gem in the whole setting of this purport. It says, the advantage of worshiping the Supreme Person is that even if one has desires for material enjoyment, if he worships Krishna, he will gradually become a pure devotee and have no more material hankering. So you can have the deck stacked completely against you. You could have been dealt a really karmic dud of a hand. But if you make it your project to not try to hide cards under the table or try to cheat at the game, if you really take shelter of Krishna with energy, he'll fix everything. He'll fix everything. And the way he'll fix everything is he'll just take away those material desires. And those are the things that really cause us the trouble in the first place. So Hare Krishna, I'm sure there's a lot of other things that could be said. So I wanted to leave plenty of time so they could be said. Yes, Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, that's a really good thing about the marriages thing. we have I came from the culture where we don't have dating things.
From where?
In India.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't have a dating culture in my family or my thing. So my parents will look for the girl, and based on my parents looking, I married the girl. So the question comes here is, as you're saying that nowadays things are not same in India also, like they have the love marriages, all those things. But still, with some people follow the traditional thing, like a parent goes with the family to see the bride or bridegroom. So then they get married based on the family generation, how they're doing all those things. Then they select the girl or the boy. But even in that things also, some things does not work out. It is not everything is not work out. Right? So what, according to the I understand is, even though you do these kind of things, there is a karma there where even though the wife is good or husband is good or one of the person is not good, things will break out. Means they get a divorce. So in the olden days there was no divorce, but nowadays because of that, exactly as you said, it does not work out, people will go out, but they don't divorce the wife or he does not leave the. So they go for the vanaprasthana or they go to the some other place and they do the meditation so that they go to the godly things compared to the lusty things.
Yeah.
So what my question is even though we follow some traditions, something like as per the Bhagavad Gita or as per the Bhagavatam, we follow the tradition, all those things, still some things happen. So that happens due to the reason. So we need to go to the God for the best thing. If you don't able to solve, that's what we need to learn, or is any other way that we can solve the problem?
Brilliant question. I thought about that as well, because the real problem is our own mind, not 50% of the time, but 100% of the time. So anything that's happening to us, what is that? 10, 14, 8. Tatenu kampam susamikshmano. Unjana evatmakritam vipakam. Hridvag vakurbir vididhan namaste. Jivetaya mukti pade sadaivak. That a devotee of the Lord thinks that what's ever happening to me is happening because of my own past karma, my own misdeeds. And whatever unhappiness, suffering, difficulty, frustration I'm going through right now, it's Krishna is giving it to me in the form of medicine. This is for my upliftment. This is good for me. So instead of bailing on your medication, and we know it's not good to bail on your medication, it's important. So then it becomes then a question of what you're saying. How can we purify our own heart so that we can deal with our own mind? Because the mind is what's giving us trouble. And guess what? It's giving the other person trouble as well.
Yes.
So if we, as you say, keep this at the forefront of our mind, that this is the material world. Things here are not designed to facilitate my happiness and my desire. And I'm supposed to realign my consciousness so I'm serving and wanting to please Krishna. Then there's plenty of work that I can do on myself so that I can be able to deal with other people and other people can be able to deal with me. Like I said, I've been married a long time, and the one thing that I've learned, if I've learned anything valuable, is this, that if there's problems in the relationship, it's my fault. It's because my desires are not being fulfilled. And that's because I've got desires that are out of bounds. They're outside the guide rail even. What to speak of the lines? I want something that I can't possibly get in the material world. And I'm trying to get it from a material arrangement. And that's crazy. So my sanity has to be my own number one priority. How can, like you say, if there's problems in the marriage, you don't just, get out. You try to purify yourself by some process of bhakti yoga. And the one thing that's helped my wife and I a lot is that every single day we read Srimad Bhagavatam. We have some discussion on this every single day. And when we do that, we find out, oh, we're actually literally and figuratively on the same page. We're grounded in the reality. Our minds may carry us all over the place for the rest of the day, but we have some very, very strong bond based on Shastra. And so I think that goes along with what you were saying.
Yeah, that's what nowadays what people are doing is like in the olden days, people used to read the Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam in the olden age, but now they're making a sense that people should learn in the young age so they can know all the process of the life, how to be in the world.
Yeah, that's what we're hearing from Kardama Muni, because he's got the same issues that every human being does, but how's he dealing with them? Oh my Lord, he's performing great tapasya. And look at his success. He's gonna manifest this huge aerial mansion and keep his wife really happy. That's just a side perk of his approach to the Lord. Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhu.
I have a question. So like we being Vaishnavas, Vaishnavis, like is it we only should marry ones in Krishna conscious? Or like have you ever heard of people marrying outside of Krishna conscious? Is that like it would not work because Advaita told me that relationships have to have God in the center. If not, then they shatter. And the biggest thing that I like that you said that you and your wife sit down and read Bhagavatam together. Like, imagine if all the couples in America right now were to sit down and read the Bible together or whatever book they have. Like, I think the divorce rate would go down, not instead of it being up. Or I don't see marriage a lot anymore. Like my parents, they were, even though like they split when I was younger, but they still got remarried. And I was raised in a household where two people are in the household. Like that's how I was raised. So like being from one girl to the next kind of foreign to me. Like it's not like I never found it as appeasing. So like that was my question. Is it like what's this? How would that be like for outsiders marrying Vaishnavas or Vaishnavas? How would that be?
I know one of the most successful marriages in my knowledge is there was a lady, disciple of Srila Prabhupada, who married a Muslim gentleman, and they had, I think, 10 kids, and they had a solid marriage because they were both committed to their spiritual paths, and that's really what it takes. You've got to have somebody of like disposition, no matter what external form their path to God may take. If in their heart they're committed to that, then you're going to find out that there's going to be some peace. Because
This is real quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing you said made me think, what Bhakti Tirtha says we should, in his 4 principles for community building, he says we should take the all complex to first.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to say was somewhere in Prabhupada's teaching, I thought it was in Srimad, I thought it was in Science of Self-Realization, where he says about like disposition, equal in education, wealth, and looks. If you wanted to work, that's like disposition.
Yeah, these are just they're just practical considerations. You're going to spend your life with somebody, you got to have some things in common, some serious things in common. Yeah. Otherwise, there's going to be trouble. I mean, there's going to be trouble anyway. You can count on that. You can take that to the bank, but we try to minimize as far as possible. Yes, Narada Muni Prabhu.
Thank you, Ekendra. So many points that I've and something I like that you said was about aging in Krishna consciousness, and Prabhupada said 40 years. That's a I want to take that one to the bank. And I was just thinking about how even though senior devotees, they get old, they get like normal old people, grumpy or cranky or whatever, but there's something there. It's different, like serving them and taking care of older people they have the proper like elder wisdom that elders are supposed to have. But in our culture, like people waste their life. So when they get old, it's really like when the rubber hits the road and like they have to realize that, other people realize that, like, oh, they're just like, they don't have any substance, you know, and they're old and they can't produce because we live in such a producer culture. So I was just thinking about something I really appreciated about Krishna consciousness is like this respect for elders. That it's like, well, it's not really bad. That's not really always there for people who haven't lived their life properly. But it still should be there, and I still, of course, take care of it. But a lot of people see their parents as like, oh, I have to take care of my mom, or you know, like it's like a burden. But when it's someone who's spent their life properly, it's a blessing.
Thank you. Yeah. All good. Did you have something? Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. I have a comment and a question. Comment is, the biggest mistake I've heard the words can make when coming to marriages. Expecting that person to make him happy. And the other person has exactly the same expectation. And then before you know it, well, you know what happens. The question is the disposition. It says, what exactly does it mean? Could you go into more detail? What you should look for to acquire or gauge the disposition that they should look into another person?
Well, there's a few ways to approach that. One way is astrology. You can, a good astrologer can see, okay, this person's kind of like this, and this person's kind of like that. It's just a question of mathematics. You kind of look at the astrological influences and what's likely to work, what's not likely to work, because there's so many practical things like, okay, let's say, for example, a rubber meets the road sort of situation. You're the kind of person who, when you have an appointment, you like to be at that appointment 15 minutes early. Are you going to be happy being married to a person who's always 15 minutes late? Or will you want to check yourself into a mental institution at some point? Yeah. Practical stuff, that's called disposition. When you go to bed at night, do you like to make sure that everything that was in the kitchen and used in the kitchen is sparkling and shiny before you even turn the light out? Or are you the kind of person that's like, we'll do those dishes tomorrow, and they gradually pile up? That's called disposition. So it's a question of the gunas, you know, the modes of nature. You have to have a compatible, because somebody who's really in the mode of goodness is going to be driven crazy by a person who's in the mode of ignorance more than they are. And the point of this whole thing is to not go crazy. That's really the point. How to maintain your sanity while living in the material world, doing the best you can with the karmic hand you've been dealt. And so you have to have somebody who's got a compatible hands, a compatible background, a compatible way of looking at the world, or else there's just going to be problems. And there's going to be problems anyway. But those are just some practical things. And really, I think in a successful relationship, like I said, there's plenty of premarital counseling that has to happen. And there has to be a lot of sharing. It's like, okay, if this happens in your life, how do you react to that? How, you know, if my parents are elderly, is my plan to just forget about them, or am I going to go and take care of them until they die? You know, what is your long-term idea of how to live your life? You know, like when my wife and I first got together, one of the first things she asked me was, "You do plan to take sannyas, don't you?" Which I thought was pretty interesting. I said, well, I'd do that next week if I thought I was qualified to do that, but I'm sitting across the table from you, so that's not going to happen right now. But you know what I mean? These kind of questions have to be asked. How do you deal with finances? Are you very, very careful about finances? And it's a question of the modes of nature mostly. The modes have to be in sync. It's because if you get a person who's more or less in the mode of ignorance, together with another person in the mode of ignorance, more or less, you'd think, oh, that's not so good. But if you're in Krishna consciousness and you've got good guidance and you're heading up, both of you, and you agree that this is what we both want, then your likelihood of maintaining sanity and happiness is better, because you're not constantly, this nature is different from that nature, and why don't you fulfill my desires and make me happy? It becomes a fight, and we're trying to be peaceful. So there's so much. That's a deep question, and takes a lot more than that to answer it completely. But that's just like general.
To add on to your question, like in India, when they do the matches, they look on the gunas.
But he used the mic for,
So when they do look for a girl or a boy, they do the gunas. They check on the astrology thing exactly. They check on the 30, like minimum they should be 32 gunas.
Yes,
minimum
32.
they should be matching. So even then also there are some issues will be there, but it cannot. But that's the best way to find out the gunas. It's your guna, and the girls and boys gunas are matching. Then the priest will say, okay, they should be taken to be good marriage for them. But there will be some difficulties they can manage, because it's not 100% true that everything will be okay, but there can be some issues, but they can deal it. That's what.
Yeah, that's the thing. You have to make a plan. With building into that plan, there are going to be problems.
Yes.
But the point is that if you're strong enough in your own spiritual life, then you can overcome those problems. But if not, then you're going to jump ship or get drowned. Yeah.
I have a line of thinking, and I just want to hear it. Like, so for the astrology thing, Ekendra Prabhu said that before he got married, he went to an astrologer, and the astrologer said, you guys are so uncompatible, you should not get married. And they've been happily married for like 40 years. And so when I read Prabhupada saying this, like what I feel like in essence is like you should have a marriage that is like approved by your mentors and like authorities, but not per se like super, like astrology doesn't. It can help. Everyone's different. But I just think like what I take away from that is you should have a relationship that you're not, that you would think your mentors would approve of, or they would approve of.
Yeah, it's a community thing. Just before, it's like astrology, Prabhupada would say, it's like looking at the weather report. Oh, it's going to rain. I got an umbrella right here. I got a raincoat. I'm going to stay inside. You take precautions. Reasonable. It's not like the be all and end all. Yes, Mata.
It's very similar. I was thinking while we were talking about this. First, I'm astrology geek, like for sure. But when it comes to like matching with somebody, I just think that there's so many astrologies out there. Even in Vedic, there's like sidereal and tropical and this and that, and people think different things about what it means. And so depending on what astrologer you go to, they're going to tell you something different, and they might not be qualified, because there's rarely any astrologer that is qualified in Kali Yuga. So it's like, it's not super reliable. Like you have also to see, like, yes, your mentors, but also practically speaking, like when you talk to the person, does it make practical sense? Otherwise we either base it on like emotions or like things that are not grounded. Even astrology is not practical or grounded if you don't see it being like aligned with actual reality.
Right. Very good. Yeah. I'm thinking Prabhupada himself had something to say about his own marriage. He was married for a long time. He had 5 kids. And at one point he was talking about his wife in giving a Bhagavatam class. And he's saying, actually, my wife was beautiful and qualified, but we just didn't get along. And when I realized that we didn't get along, I went to my father. I said, Dad, I'm thinking maybe I'll get a second wife. Maybe when I'll find somebody I can get along with a little better than the first one. And his father said, no, I would suggest you don't do that. Because if you don't get along so well, then she is your very best friend. Because that will help you later on in your spiritual life. And Prabhupada said, at first, I really didn't understand what my father was trying to say. But then he's looking at himself and his situation and what he's done, and that he was able to take sannyas. He said, if I had married again, I may never have been able to come to this position. Hare Krishna.
I heard that in the happening, his father told Prabhupada that in your chart, there's sannyas. So the fact that you're not attracted by life is good.
Mhm.
Not sure if it was the same occasion, but I heard that.
It's time to stop, right? It's like 8:30.
One more comment, this will be brought in.
Anything? Yes.
You said what you feel the show, but there's a pastime that the problem that's like vaguely in my mind. Someone who always like yell from a balcony, like obscene things at Prabhupada, and then one day he's not there anymore, and he turns to his disciple. Where is he? He's my best friend. You know that pastime?
I know a similar thing, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta.
Oh,
There was, of course, many people were very critical of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and vocally so, publicly vocally so. And one time, one of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's critics, whom he knew was his critic, died, and he expressed sadness. He said, "No, he was my friend. He was my friend, that he criticized me." So all these things need to be kept in mind. We've all got issues, and they all need to get worked out. So one way or the other, they're going to have to get worked out. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai.